awesome. And welcome to the Sleep is a Skill podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time in the midst of this busy biohacking congress.
Yeah.
I know you're juggling all kinds of things, so thank you. And I just wanted to actually, for anyone watching and listening, to know a little bit more about what it is we're doing here. Where are we? What's the deal? We are at the Biohacking Congress in Las Vegas. Here are over 30 plus great speakers at biohacking and 30 plus health companies at the exhibit space. And we are excited to learn from great biohackers, doctors, scientists, as well as explore their products and digital health devices. So really the important takeaway is that it can be a real life-changing weekend for many people attending, and we recommend checking out the Biohacking Congress website at biohackingcongress.com and get your ticket to the next Biohacking Congress in Boston, and that is happening June 11th and 12th, 2022. Okay, so aside from all that, I'm really excited to speak more with you. I had the opportunity to be on your podcast recently and loved some of the things that you shared that were just so poignant to this topic of sleep. So wanted to really give you the opportunity to share how it is that you got into this space of becoming like a health detective in so many regards.
Yeah, we had so much fun. We were just bouncing back and forth, and we both realized, okay, we're actually both biohackers.
Yes.
It made total sense. But yeah, I didn't get into this space by choice, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just one of those things for most of us.
Same.
It calls us. I always make a joke that there's no 5-year-olds out there yet that say, I can't wait to be like a biohacker or a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. That's just not where we're at, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's something that does find us. And so I started dealing with a variety of health symptoms at 5 years old. Panic attacks, depression, cystic acne, all these things are going on. GERD, chronic sinusitis, Meniere's disease at 18. And I'm spreading out many years now, about 13 of them. But all of these things kept stacking on. None of the answers that I was given ever made sense. And at the very best, there was just a treatment for one specific thing that maybe worked, but caused side effects and did not address the other things at all. So that was kind of a huge issue. But of course, we're talking about sleep today. And it's actually not something I mentioned nearly enough. My sleep was terrible most of my life.
Yes.
I would stay up super late. I would stay up till 2, 3, 4 in the morning, even as sometimes a 10 or 11-year-old. And this was always contributed to the anxiety. But looking back, I think there was a lot of things that was actually leading to the anxiety and the sleep. I don't think it was just the anxiety causing that. And now we know there's more studies that show, 42% of people under the age of 18 that go to bed past 12, I said that actually kind of weird. If you go to bed past 12 and you're under the age of 18, you're 42% more likely to be diagnosed with depression. We know that adult early risers are 27% less likely to be diagnosed with depression. So we're seeing how the sleep thing affects mental health, and that's a huge topic I'm passionate about in addition to the physical health stuff. And so over time, I got to this point, and I just shared this yesterday on another podcast we were doing. I had suicidal ideations because of the depression at 15, 16 years old, no doubt about it. And it's pretty hard to say that someone isn't having depressive type of symptoms if they're having suicidal ideations, but I feel like there actually can be a separate thing. I got diagnosed with Meniere's disease at 18. And I thought for a few months that my life was actually getting better and that things were going well. When I got diagnosed with that, I'm told it's incurable. I'm going to lose my hearing in one ear. Going to need a surgery one day, and I'm going to be on this medication for the rest of my life. Okay, have a good day. And I'm not saying that it was that impersonal, but it was pretty damn close to that. And it was just so shocking that I started getting these suicidal thoughts again, but it wasn't in this depressed way of, I'm going to do this today. It was kind of just practical. Why am I here? This sucks. I have felt bad my entire life. Now I get told this when I finally think I'm on the right track. I never knew what it was like to be truly healthy. I didn't know what it was like to feel good. So to me, I was just wondering, why am I here? This can't go on forever. Now that was actually, ironically, kind of a great thought, because since it didn't come from a depressed place, it was practical. I started saying, well, if I'm going to do something like that, shouldn't I try just about everything first before I really throw in the towel and just say I'm going to end my life at 18?
Right.
And thank God that I took that route, because that's when I started thinking outside the box. I wondered if nutrition could be an aspect. I wondered if lifestyle could be an aspect. And once I got that needle moving a little bit, Molly, that's all I needed. I didn't need to be perfect.
Right.
I needed to see something moving in the right direction.
Yes.
And when I saw that, I'm like, okay, these guys, it was tough as an 18-year-old, no college degree, of course, to challenge the medical system. But I was just like, objectively, what they're saying I now know is wrong. Because I'm getting results that they said they couldn't get. I'm doing it without the medications. This doesn't make sense. So I don't think they're malicious people, and I know now they're definitely not. they're stuck in the same system too.
Sure.
If you look at most doctors, folks, they're not sitting on the fountain of youth themselves, right? They're usually sicker than most of us in certain regards. That inspired me to just start diving into this stuff, the world of biohacking,
Yes.
functional medicine, optimizing sleep and circadian biology. Yeah, so that's kind of my story in summary and how I got to learning about this stuff initially.
Amazing. Okay, so one, thank you for your vulnerability and sharing that background, because so many people listening at some point, especially if they're dealing with sleep, we often struggle to find areas of mental health that aren't interconnected with sleep difficulties. So that makes a ton of sense, and really appreciate that, because I think it's not discussed enough. And from that place, you began to you certainly made a big pivot, and you took this upon yourself to really dive deeper, become a bit of your own self-advocate in the area of your health. So take us through what you began to discover, and particularly I know you have a big emphasis on light. I think we have a real bond on ours.
Sure.
I feel like it's not emphasized enough. You were just on this panel yesterday. I loved one of your answers of saying, light.
Guys, yeah.
People, light. Yeah. And, it's kind of like, oh, that's nice. Next, what's the supplement? What's the... But really, that topic alone. So just tell us a bit more about what you kind of discovered on this process of aiding your health that aided your sleep, and certainly touching on the light.
That took many years, but I'd love to jump right into that.
Please,
because
I know
I wish I'd known
it was a long question. Yeah.
Right, no, I wish I had known it first, because I was doing all of these things in the beginning, like eating organic and eating vegetarian. I thought that was ideal at the time, but I'm still staying up till 3 or 4 in the morning. And I got my 8 hours. That was the hilarious part.
Right.
I had this lifestyle where I could technically sleep until 11 or 12. I thought 8 hours was 8 hours. That is not the case.
Yes,
It's
that's
definitely
what I did. The same thing, and I'd be justified and righteous about it, because I would say, well, I can make my own schedule, so whatever.
Yeah,
but
I'll just go to bed at sunrise. That's cool.
Yeah.
And that was not working so well. So then I started studying the idea, and I think this came from getting into the paleo stuff. Like, okay, what did our ancestors eat? And now it's hilarious, because you'll have like paleo pancakes, and I promise you guys, cavemen, we're not whipping up pancakes. But it makes sense that there were certain dietary things and seasonal things that, yes, people in that era probably were limited to eating-wise. They couldn't ship a banana to Pennsylvania in the middle of winter. That's ridiculous. You would have only had certain things. You'd be lucky if you had food at all, to be dead honest. And then I started applying that to everything else, and I realized it's not just a food problem. We have to realize, and it's not to be scared of everything, but we have to understand that anything that we are doing that is not in alignment with what our ancestors were doing is at least subject to be questioned in how it's affecting our health. Sitting right now, and again, this is not to create paranoia, it's just awareness. Sitting right now, okay, my ancestors wouldn't have done that. Does this make sense? Does this have an effect? And I use that example because we do know sitting is not great for us, right? We want to be walking and moving. But it has to be like everything. Is it, wow, I'm not in the sun right now. Does that affect me? And it turns out, yes, it does. When we start isolating the light spectrum and we start playing God with this, and that's what I call it, right? We're actually playing God or pretending to be the creators of nature. You can consider it whatever you want or what resonates with you. Yes, there's consequences to that. And I don't know if you were in the lecture part yesterday, but I pulled up this photo. All you guys got to do is look this up. Look up the differences between like daylight, fluorescence, whatever, and then click Google Images. And you'll see, because I think we're visual creatures, it helps. You'll see just how different daylight is from these other things. And then we forget that we're really kind of talking about a lot of like the visible light spectrum there. And most people don't realize that we can only see 0.0035% of the light spectrum. Now, I think actually from a spiritual sense, this is kind of interesting, because you know how certain people say they can see things? I have this hypothesis that perhaps they have a different percentage. Because imagine if that was even adjusted to 0.4 or 0.004.
Sure.
You have a whole world around you right now. We have this whole world around us that we can't see. And if there's fluctuations in everything else, what if there's fluctuations in certain people's ability to see wavelengths? So that's my little side note, right? Kind of fun.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, fun stuff. But the point is, I realized, wow, we're missing this. And so I started studying this, and then in how it relates to sleep, I realized that this was setting our internal clock. The morning light, the daylight, the sunset, and the lack of light at night, all of this stuff matters. And so I'll dive into that a little bit. And you might have touched on this on the show. What really came down to for the sleep thing, and kind of the most important thing to me, was the discovery of melanopsin. And I think I reference this correctly. I believe it was 1998 that they discovered it in the eye of the human being, and also this frog. It was the first thing that came up. And then it was 2017 we discovered it on the skin. And so melanopsin is this photoreceptor. It's in the intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells in the eye, and again on the skin. And melanopsin is the thing that's going to pick up that light. Now, specifically, we're talking about light in the 400 to 550 nanometer wavelength range, which, believe it or not, is that blue light that people block. It's also part of the green light as well. That hits melanopsin. It goes directly through to the SCN, which is the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and that's in the hypothalamus. Now, everyone talks about HPA axis dysfunction. We heard about the hypothalamus a million times during these lectures at this conference. But people are forgetting that there is the SCN in there, this internal clock, and it's living in the hypothalamus, and light's the number one thing that triggers it. So your body is waiting to receive these signals via the SCN to tell the rest of your body what to do. And the hypothalamus is related to a lot of different cool things. There's a lot of different axes it's on. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, hypothalamic pituitary thyroid axis, gonadal, ovary, like it's major things, guys. So, if we're getting the wrong signals all the time, it doesn't take too long before the hypothalamus is a little messed up because, we're in here right now, and to the best of its ability, if I'm not wearing these glasses, and even if I am, because it's a skin problem too, I'm being told that it's the middle of the day and I don't have any of the other light with it. That's an issue. So, because it's the middle of the day right now, that's great, but it wasn't the middle of the day at 8 a.m., it was 8 a.m. It's certainly not going to be the middle of the day at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. when people are here tonight and it's nighttime, and we're giving those false signals. And I think the biggest issue right now is we're seeing this kind of like in our generation, and especially our kids, they grow up, they don't even know what it's like to have a half-decent circadian rhythm. Perhaps even our parents don't necessarily. It might have been less of an effect, but lamps, TVs, even the old ones, that stuff all matters. So I'll pause for a second. I don't know if there's any route that you want to go, but I can go off forever, obviously.
Oh, no, because I love I think there's some shared passion on this topic, and I think listeners can never quite get enough of, because this is an entire course in and of itself, is really the study of light and how this plays such a crucial role to our sleep results. So I really appreciate you going deeper with that. And in your own life, was this something, how did this begin to look for you? I mean, I know you were really delving into this at a relatively young age. How have you been dealing with this? How are you making sense of it from a social perspective and having that support your sleep?
Yeah, and this was like one of the toughest things, especially getting into this more in-depth at like 20, 21 years old. I needed to give up a lot of these things that I was holding on to that brought me pleasure in the moment to actually get pleasure and gratification, like real satisfaction actually, later in my life. It was giving up that instant gratification for true life satisfaction. I thought I wanted to go out to all these parties and drink with my friends or whatever. And it sounds silly, but it is weird when you're that age and you're watching everyone else be able to do this. And not only do you not want to really, in a sense? I can't. I can't. I would get sick from 2 or 3 shots the next day. I'd have a hangover, and I'd watch my 220-pound buddy kill half a handle of vodka and go to work after 4 hours of sleep. I'm like, why? How is this happening? It just didn't make sense to me. And so once I eventually gave that up and I realized this is not actually in alignment with my life, this is not where I want to go, and it's not coming from a place of judgment, it's just not for me. I moved away from that, and I started just figuring out who the hell's Evan Transue, what does he actually want? I want to be healthy, I want to feel good. So that's an illusion that I actually want to go out and do this drinking stuff. I don't want to do that. I just started living my life, and the people that belonged in it remained in or even came in, and the people that didn't, it's not that I burned the bridge, but I cross it less often, I always say. So that kind of happened. I did my own thing, what Evan Transue needed to do, and I stuck by that. So it started with blocking blue light at night, and I started out ignorantly as most people. I bought like those Uvex glasses off Amazon, the 70% blockage probably, and I'm still staying up to 1 a.m., mind you, and no sunrise. So I did that for about 3-4 months. I said, okay, it did work. It helped a little bit. And then I'm like, well, how far does this go? Then I got introduced to Dr. Jack Kruse and his work, and I know a controversial guy, but I don't think anyone can deny he's brilliant, and he knows what the hell he's doing. And the fact that he was doing this stuff 10, 15 years ago, like genius is kind of an he's predicting science before it actually comes out as science. You're like, whoa, all right. So then I realized the sunrise thing. I'm like, oh, okay, it's not just blocking the bad. It's like stopping eating junk food, but not eating good food, right? Like we can't just eat nothing all the time. Fasting's great, but not 24/7. We got to put the good stuff in. So you can think of artificial light as junk food and sunlight as good food. That's your organic health food store type of stuff, right? And so I needed to get some of that too. And I started shifting that sleep thing once I got involved with FDN, Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. So that's where I'm a practitioner. That's where I host that podcast. They were talking about waking up at like ideally 6 or 7 and going to bed at 10, no later than 11. And so I actually did it for that reason. I mixed in the sun thing with it. And that was just so, it was amazing because at first I couldn't really not sleep until 8 a.m. I would sleep for almost 10 hours. And they were telling me this is worth it. Even Jack Kruse will say stuff like that. When you're fixing the HPA axis dysfunction, you might not be able to wake up perfectly with sunrise because you're going to try to heal. So just do what you can. Get outside as soon as you can. And I would do that. And then what I found is it was almost like a switch. After a couple months of this happening, I started waking up, after like 7-8 hours of sleep, perfectly in alignment with sunrise.
Yes.
And now this has gotten better to the point where like when I'm under low stress, I only need like 6.5 hours of sleep.
Yep.
And this is so ironic from someone who was sleeping 10 hours before. And you actually encouraged me to do this. I didn't get the Oura Ring yet because I got to do the sizing thing and I wanted instant gratification. But I did grab a Fitbit literally because of our podcast to track my readiness score, the HRV, the sleep stuff. And I was amazed at what I found. I was traveling the one day and I was in a hotel. I had like 3 presentations that day.
Yeah.
And I wake up the next day. It was like the first day it was giving me a readiness score. It was a 16 out of 100. I was like, oh, this is what traveling does to me. This is a lot. And then once I got back home, I've had 99s, 100. So and that's pretty good even in our space.
Fantastic.
I'm like, this is great.
Yes.
So I know the things that I'm doing are working. I just got to balance the travel. I'm not meant to live a 365-day lifestyle. I don't think anyone is on the road. So balance it when I can. But using this data is really kind of important. And I wish I had it before. I know I must have been doing something right because of how I get this readiness score now. But my girlfriend, we're tracking her because she just started doing the sunrise thing. And she's been using a Garmin for a while. So we'll report the findings to you and you can share it. Yeah.
Please. Yes. And that's what we actually in our weekly newsletter will often include kind of screenshots and snapshots. So please, we encourage everyone to send any kind of experiments that you're doing.
Yeah, we'll send it in.
Yes. And what's so great about what you're sharing is particularly at a younger age, navigating how to make this really a lifestyle, because so much of this is counterculture. We're discussing something that, besides the fact that it was more of an ancestral based thing for thousands of years, for really the majority of the time that humans have been on this planet, we were doing this thing. And yet now this is so outside the bell curve in a lot of ways. It does take a bit of that kind of mindset conversation, and I think sometimes we can graze past it. But I think it's important because that's one of the biggest things I see is that people will say, okay, that's a nice idea. I'm kind of into it. Maybe they'll try a couple days of getting this earlier wake up times, but then they find that it's so outside of what society is doing. So for you to kind of take a personal leadership role in your own life, really acknowledge you for doing that.
Thanks. And I think that's one of the unwritten responsibilities of like the biohacking stuff. I think we need to be leaders in this because the truth of the matter is the only reason we think we need to do all that stuff is because everyone else is doing it. That's our very primal type of thing to follow the tribe, So I know it sounds crazy or even idealistic, but I do believe we can reinvent society and get back to a place where we have a nice balance. And I say nice balance in the sense of like, I don't think anyone wants hospitals to not be open at 1 a.m.
Right.
We can figure that out maybe, but I don't think we should have 24-hour convenience stores and all this stuff. We're killing people doing this stuff and they're doing it for $12 damn an hour. It's insulting. I hate when I see Walmart, they're like, night shift, we'll give you $1 extra an hour. I'm like,
really?
that, man. Yeah,
that's
not
shaving, like,
unbelievable.
Life off your,
Yeah, for a lousy extra $1 that you're going to get taxed on anyway. It's like absolutely ridiculous to me. So we got to be leaders. We got to be the people out there. And whether for better or for worse, for some of us, because of the things that we've dealt with, I know that you kind of had your health issues later, but you felt some stuff for sure.
Absolutely.
I've been so damn sick, and I've seen family members die. I've seen family members have their organs removed. I don't need to see anymore to realize this isn't worth the sugar. This isn't worth the staying up late and the BS. This is not even, it's an illusion. It's not actually a better life. It's really a lie. And so I'm so thankful when I can come here and to these conferences and see other people doing this kind of stuff, see people my age even sometimes doing it. It's just a blessing, and it gives me inspiration to go back out in the world and share this stuff with other people.
Yes. Yeah, you're living it. So fantastic. Okay, so so from that place, you touched on FDN, and I'm sure, and you continue to evolve and test different things. What are some of the things specific to sleep that you have discovered that have really made a difference in your sleep results?
Sure. So it's kind of, we can get into like more like weird stuff, maybe even outside of the light. I came across, and I think you actually knew about this one. It was a weird meta-analysis that not many people know about regarding EMF exposure and melatonin secretion. And it's in animals and humans. And it was pretty damn well done. I was like, okay, this is interesting. And it showed that when humans are exposed to about 50 to 60 hertz, which is nothing. Like, we are exposed to that right now, anytime we're in any electromagnetic field, which is always, just so you know, it does affect our melatonin secretion. Now, we understand that there's a problem then, but it still brings up, okay, well, what is the practical solution to this? I will admit I actually don't have the answer to that yet, but I've experimented myself. I've heard some people make the argument that because of this, perhaps we should just be microdosing melatonin at all times. I have not found that on a consistent basis to work for me. Some people swear by it. But what I mean is, instead of the 3 milligram stuff, the 10 milligram stuff that you go and buy from your health food store, or even especially like a local convenience store, they'll megadose it, get smaller doses. I'm talking like 200 micrograms, 300 micrograms, 100 micrograms, and you can kind of scale that with the age. So people ask, well, how do you get that? All you have to do is buy a liquid version. Most tinctures are like 30 drops for 3 milligrams, so each drop's roughly, 100 micrograms. And if you can't get that at your health food store, just get it from Life Extension. They're like $8 a bottle. The bottle's going to last you almost a year if you do it this way. And people will say, well, that's not enough melatonin. That's going to put me like not to sleep. You will find typically that it actually works better than other dosages, and you don't wake up with that grogginess, that hangover feeling almost like, oh my God, I took too much. So I've learned to feel my body out with that. I can only take it for like several days in a row. And I always take it traveling. I have something right now where, I'm taking about 0.25 milligrams every single night while I'm traveling, and then once I get back home, I'll be kind of good again. I'll take a little break. But I mix it in, and I found that to work very well. And so again, we know that there's a problem with the EMF thing. I don't really have a wonderful solution to it yet. I haven't tested the whole, Faraday cage thing yet. That you can literally put over your bed, like the canopy, right?
Totally. Yeah.
I would probably unplug my router at night. That's for sure. I think that's just kind of a smart thing. But that's just to start off. That's at least one thing that people probably haven't heard about before.
Yes.
That can be actionable. At the very least, try the microdose melatonin and see how that works for you. It might be a game changer.
Amazing. And to kind of discuss a bit about FDN.
Yes.
One, if you can just share a bit more about FDN, and two, someone coming in, I know it's a much bigger topic than this, but someone's coming in specifically dealing with sleep issues. Are there particular tests that you will ensure that you have them run?
Yep.
And I know this is incredibly bio-individual, but kind of top-down things for people to be aware of.
Well, that's what's kind of interesting about FDN, because we do offer a variety of testing. So primarily we are a course that certifies people in functional lab analysis and creating these protocols for clients. We're also very big on the business support now. So many people are kind of like us where, well, you're different because you kind of had that business mind before this. A lot of people in the health space do not have that. They get into it for the health reasons. Then they're like, oh, wait, to do this, I kind of need to start my own business.
Sure.
So we help a lot with that now. And it's going very well, even for people who didn't know the difference between like the damn tax forms, let alone do they know how to sell or market themselves.
Yeah.
So we do train you in that. And we keep the individuality aspect, but we actually run 6 labs on everyone. That's what's recommended. And here's the thing. The results of those are going to be different for everyone. The reason we came up with those 6 is because, first of all, Reed Davis, the founder, literally worked with over 10,000 clients in his time in practice. It was crazy. And he realized that there's kind of 6 major areas that people are getting affected. So we use this acronym called HIDDEN, which is hormonal, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production, nervous system. I swore I was going to choke on that one time during this weekend. I think that's the last time I'll have to say it.
You did it.
Yeah. So you're like, you just forget something you say all the
totally.
time. So we tested those areas, and what we find is at least 80% of the time, honestly, if you just create protocols based on what you found, so it's individualized because the results are individualized, but if you just use those tests, 80% of the time, the person's going to get better. And that includes sleep. We don't address anything specifically. It's everything non-specifically. And so could you come in for sleep or anxiety or depression or lupus or whatever? Sure, because there's dysfunction going on in your body. We're looking at a broad array of dysfunctions. We're teaching you the lifestyle stuff, the biohacking stuff as well, and then we're customizing that lifestyle stuff to you with the analysis that we have from the lab results. And that's kind of the elevator pitch, just the summary of it. So if you want to get trained in that, that's something you can do. But even if you're looking to work with someone like that, that's our approach. So we're going to teach you the lifestyle stuff, yes. But as you've been stressed out, as you've gotten beat up by this modern world, unique things have happened to Mollie. Unique things have happened to me. You might have a gut pathogen that I don't have. You might have a certain hormonal issue that I don't have, or a food sensitivity, or whatever it is. So we can greatly accelerate the rates of people's healing, but we also need to do the lifestyle stuff at the end of the day, because it's the lack of the lifestyle stuff that got them to that place to begin with.
Definitely. Okay, and then, so now for you, you're working with clients as they come through with this protocol day in, day out?
Yep, that's what an FDN would do, yeah.
Yep, and so as you're doing that, are there ways that you're helping to handle the behavioral side of things for people with the that are struggling with the sleep portion? And I hear you, because it's a wide array. But with that, are there certain kind of general practices? I know you mentioned the 10 or 11 p.m. bedtime. And kind of general protocols.
Well, so to answer your question, before the science really kind of perfectly indicated that, yes, we should be going to bed at this time. I mean, Reed already kind of realized 20 years ago that, yes, people need to go to bed at 10 p.m.
Sure.
Couldn't explain it fully, but the guy's really genius, to be honest. And it's interesting because I come across as a nerd. I feel like you're a little, you're a mix, but definitely nerdier. Totally. Yeah. But Reed can come across as like a guy that can shoot the crap about like sports or whatever, and then he rattles this stuff off. You're like, wow, like he's got a good balance. Nice. It's just kind of cool that he knew this stuff beforehand. But yeah, so we're. Well, I'm sorry. What was the original question? I'm too tired at this point.
I know.
Speaking of sleep.
Speaking of sleep,
not even going to fake that.
It's been quite a weekend, let me tell you. So, yes, with FDN, and we're looking at this wide array of things that people can do to make a difference with their health and their sleep. Are there particular protocols that we're ensuring that people utilize for sleep? And because to your point, Reed has been doing this for so long. He had an innate sense that 10 p.m. bedtime or what have you makes a lot of sense. Do you say you got to buy the blue blockers? You got to set up your lighting in a particular way, or are there other things that you really?
Thank you. So in the FDN philosophy, he's actually allowing me to start adding in more of this biohacking stuff, which is really cool. But there's still a lot of great things in there. And one of the things he noticed throughout the years that I think actually gets underrepresented in the space a lot is that gut pathogen thing that I kind of alluded to before. Yes. You can almost see on someone's hormone results, because we test cortisol diurnal rhythms, and so we're actually testing for 4 measurements throughout the day. So we'll test the morning, mid-morning, afternoon, and nighttime. And the reason that you do that is multifaceted. Sometimes Western medicine will only test for the morning. Like my morning cortisol when I went through FDN looked fine. Yeah. If I went to them and asked for that test, if they even gave it to me, my cortisol would have seemed fine. All of my other 3 markers were tanked. They couldn't hang in there. Yeah. But if we see what we call a relative elevation, so it means relative to your other markers, and this is where, not to get too complicated, but we do teach something called clinical correlation, and you kind of really learn to be that detective, that's why we call ourselves health detectives, to figure out, all right, we see these lab results, but we're not just focusing on the surface level results. We're really trying to analyze what's going on here. So you could see someone that has a low cortisol level at night in the reference range, but it's a relative elevation for that person based on their other results. So if we saw a relative elevation at night, one of the most common things is, well, one, did you fight with someone? Did you argue with your whatever? Are you thinking about the life stresses, the taxes, whatever it might be? And if we can clear that out, it's amazing how often it actually is a gut pathogen. And the reason for that is, and it's kind of interesting that Chinese medicine knew this and now we're kind of showing this, it does seem like these pathogens are more active at night. The science is actually showing that. And so, right when you're trying to go to bed, they try to hang out, stress response happens, cortisol goes up. And now you have a huge sleep issue. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen that in practice where people do have these parasites or bacteria. We get that kind of removed or eliminated, and then their sleep's kind of fixed. The one person, Martha Lewis, that I know, she just focuses on sleep, and she's an FDN, and she's huge on the gut testing for sleep stuff. It's pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
so that's one thing at least.
And to your point, that's one area, and it takes this really the totality of the answers to some of these tests that you are running to get a full picture versus just pigeonholing of certain things.
Yeah, we're just trained on so many different things. It's like it could be a course, and it's like, well, in fact, it is, right? You know, because you're going through hundreds of different markers, how they relate to other things. So you come out knowing a damn lot. But yeah, that's just one of
Many.
probably
Yeah.
hundreds of examples that I could use
Sure.
for how we're addressing it.
So great. Okay, well then, I know you're so in the midst of all of this and you're really curious and you are surrounded by people that are looking to improve their health. So we want to ask a couple questions about how you're managing your
Yeah.
sleep. I know we've already touched on some, but going a little bit deeper. So 3 things that we want to just see or hear more about how we can learn what we can do. So the first one is, what does your nightly sleep routine look like right now? And I know sometimes it's travel, I'm sure it evolves, but what might we see?
Yeah, and admittedly, it might not be what people think. I'm not always the best with everything. I use tech kind of late into later than I should. Like, it's still like 9 p.m.
Yeah.
I do it a different way, though, and it looks crazy to the outside world. My room is completely dark. I have the iris filter for sleep on my
Yes.
screen, so it's all red.
Same.
And then I have my glasses on top of it, and I don't try to allow my skin to be exposed. And I
Yeah.
find that kind of works for me still. Now, I enjoy being on that stuff before bed. I don't find that it gets my mind racing, so that works. But then before I go to bed, people could call this meditation or whatever they want. I'm very big on visualization, and
Yeah.
even you can consider it manifestation. I have found that it works in my life. People
Yeah.
can agree with that or disagree with that. It's fine. So I'm actually picturing these wonderful scenes of the things I want to have happen in my life before I go to bed. So whether or not you believe in that actually working in the practical world, it's still a wonderful thing, I think, to do before we go to bed.
Absolutely.
Because so many people are ruminating on the negative of the day or, my God, again, the taxes are late or whatever it
Yes.
might be. And instead, we can focus on something kind of beautiful. And again, regardless of what your opinion is on that in terms of the manifestation stuff, I don't think it can hurt to think of something good before bed.
Yeah.
And I find myself just kind of drifting naturally into sleep now, visualizing these amazing things that I want to have happen in my life.
Fantastic.
And that works very well for my sleep. I go to bed really easily. It doesn't usually take me more than 6-7 minutes. And the studies show that that's what it kind of should be, as you know.
Yeah.
It shouldn't take that long to get to bed.
Absolutely.
So,
Great.
yeah, this is a guy who used to be up for hours. It's crazy to think about. Yeah.
A miracle.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, good. So then the second question would be, what might we find on your nightstand? And again, that might shift if you're traveling. So that could include like apps or supplements or ambiance. Any
Okay,
call-outs?
cool. So I love my blue light blocking glasses. I use my red ones at night, obviously.
Yeah.
You'll never not see me with that. I think I've accidentally missed like 4 days in the last 4 years or something.
Great.
And it's because I was traveling and genuinely
Yeah.
forgot. I'm like, how, Ev, how?
Yes.
But I forget my phone charger more often than I forget that. That's how important it is
Yes.
to me. So you'll see that. You will also see, I bought one of those red amber reading lights. Have you ever seen
yes,
those?
I
So
have one too. I travel with it. Yes.
yeah. Well, I actually don't even always use it for just reading. I
Yes.
use it as a legitimate lamp
yeah.
because it's mobile, so I don't have to just get a bulb. I can walk around with
Yep.
it, and it has like usually 50 to 60 hours of battery life. They're like
Yeah.
$12, $13, and I can get one easily if I lose it or something. So I have that with me right now. I actually use that as the light source when I'm traveling or even in my room. The Himalayan salt lamp, something that's
Yep.
big too. I like that. And then actually a simple one, but it's underestimated. I have a fan wherever I go. I cannot believe how much that white noise, that subtle white
yes.
noise, helps people. And I thought it was just me.
Yeah.
And then I do it with clients. If I don't have that, I don't sleep through the night. If I have that, I sleep like a baby for 7 to 8 hours, and I wake up when I'm supposed to wake up.
Yes.
I don't know why that one thing does it so much. I also don't know if I've just created a habit where I've learned to rely on that.
Pavlovian, yeah.
But either way, But either way, I need that. So that's what the stuff you're
Sure.
going to see. I keep
Great.
it simple. It's not anything
Yes.
crazy, but it works very well. And then, of course, I have like my emergency melatonin and stuff. I also have a supplement that I like that's called Theanine Serene. And so it has L-theanine in it, some GABA, Relora, holy basil, and so it's very good for people with anxiety as well. Although, ironically, it's marketed to people with anxiety, but they're horse pills, and many people with anxiety have problems swallowing
Yes.
pills. So
The irony.
if you guys have an issue with that, a little cool tip that I learned when I had terrible anxiety is you squeeze your left thumb when you're swallowing it. It reduces the gag reflex. It's actually proven. And so it can help you,
Really?
can help you swallow larger pills. But yeah, if you really have an issue with it, it's not great for you, but I found that stuff knocks me out pretty well.
Oh my goodness, that is very cool about the thumb trick.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this. Okay.
You squeeze it pretty hard, but
Yeah.
you do it right when you're swallowing, and it suppresses the gag reflex a little bit.
Okay, I will let my fiance know about that. He doesn't swallow any pills at all.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
and he calls himself a biohacker purist. He doesn't take any of these
It's one way to word it, yeah.
But it's really just a nice spin on the fact that he actually doesn't really
Biohacking
can't get
purist, that's
the
funny.
can't get
I
the
like
pills
that.
down. You know. So I will share that. That's fantastic. And then the last question, and we might have already touched on it, but it is looking at what has been made the biggest change to your sleep game, or been the biggest kind of aha moment around managing your sleep.
I'll keep it general as light because still
Yeah,
to this day I can't
absolutely.
tell if it's the sunrise that matters more or the blocking the blue light at night.
Yes.
And quite frankly, I am not in a position, nor do I have any desire to do an experiment where I take one of those away. If my schedule clears out, I've actually considered that. Like just for like 2 weeks, I'm like not
If you
catch
do
the sunrise.
that, let me see your stats.
I will,
please.
yeah.
Yes.
What happens when I take this away? But it's like it feels so good that I don't want to, so I'll keep it general with light. You gotta be blocking the blue light at night at least the 2 hours, guys. But ideally, when sunrise happens or sunset happens,
sure.
and then catching the sunrise for 30 minutes in the morning. I don't know of anything else. Not to add one more thing in, maybe the not eating before bed thing too.
Yes.
Like that
Huge.
affects me for
Yeah.
sure. I never eat. I don't eat usually after dark, but absolutely not 3 to 4 hours before bed.
Yes.
And if you want to argue that to the extreme, go have a steak 30 minutes before bed, and then the next day go fast 4 hours before bed. You will. It's so obvious.
Yes.
So then you wonder where does the line get drawn? Because I like to
Yes.
use arguing to absurdity to make a point.
Yeah.
And eating a steak 30 minutes before bed is kind of absurd to a degree. Eating nothing for 4 hours might be absurd to some people. It's not absurd to us.
No.
But yeah, you use those extremes to see that this works, then find your good little balance there. So there's like
I
3
love
things
that.
for you. Bob.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Okay. So for anyone listening, I love the passion that you've been sharing, the vulnerability, and this whole concept of becoming really your own personal detective in this area. So how can people follow more of what you are doing and FDN?
Sure.
Yeah,
Well,
let
well,
us know the whole thing.
Thank you. And I separated into 2 parts because my first place is evantransue.com and at Evan_Transue on Instagram. And it might throw people off because I actually don't talk about the health stuff on there.
Sure.
I'm a motivational speaker for youth, and I actually encourage them to reach out.
I did not know that.
Yeah, to talk and reach out about their mental health issues. And I found that the marketing is so confusing for people. Like schools think I'm going to come in and talk about functional medicine. They actually don't want that. So
Okay.
I'm a actually pure motivational speaker, and I love that. I don't want to give that up yet.
Sure.
And so that's my marketing on there. But if you want the more functional side, then you got to follow us at FDN Training, FDN Training on Instagram, FDNtraining.com to learn more about functional diagnostic nutrition. And if you are a podcaster, which you must be if you're listening to this, you like them, then just another cool one to add on to your list is the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. So we interview people who have been through trickiest of health challenges.
Yeah.
How did they get through this? And sometimes it's people like Mollie, she's been on there. And then we have people that have been misdiagnosed for 37 years. Heather Cohen literally was a person that had that and then came out on the other side. So great podcast, super fun. And for people that feel isolated like us, you said like the culture
Yes,
kind of does
sure.
this. There is no better way, in my opinion, to feel inspired and just like, wow, I'm not the only one doing this than to listen to that because you're listening to people who've actually been through this, overcome the cultural norms, and gotten their health under control.
Oh, I love that. And I did not know about the motivational speaker piece, and yet that fits so perfectly with what we've been saying about really becoming a leader in this area of your health and well-being, even if that does beckon us to kind of step outside of some of the social norms in a particular way and really set an example of what's possible so that more people can be in this conversation. So it's so great. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Sure,
Definitely
thanks for
check
having
out
me.
all those resources. Absolutely. Clear that there's more conversation to come. I feel like we scratched the surface.
Yeah.
So again, thank you.
Cool, thanks.
Great.